We're stepping now into a new era of the ministry of Jesus. Up to this point, we've seen people who believe, people who don't believe, and people who are indifferent. Now we're going to see Jesus performing miracles, and we're going to see teachers of the law begin to get angry with Jesus. And over the next few chapters, we see that anger turn into attempts to have Jesus arrested. And as we know, in the end of all four gospel accounts, ultimately that leads to the death of Jesus. John writes this starting in John chapter 5, verse 1. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which had 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. Once again, Jesus is in Jerusalem for one of the many Jewish feasts. And once again, he finds a time, a place, and a desperate situation to be part of. He comes to a pool that's a lot like this area that I'm standing in right now. Natural spring water, close to the marketplace. It's becoming a bit of a legend. It's believed by many people that an angel came down and stirred the waters so that if you had disease, you could get in the water at the moment and you would be healed. The more likely scenario was that the pool had a spring that caused it to bubble, and it also likely had minerals that would be beneficial to certain physical ailments. It's unlikely that this particular pool had any real miraculous powers, but the legend was born nonetheless, and people with need began gathering there. They came so regularly, in fact, that someone had built 5 structures that they could find shade in. Can you imagine what this place must have been like? These were people who were debilitated by their life circumstances. They mostly had nothing and no one. They were desperate. They were the outcasts of society. Many people viewed them as space takers that couldn't really contribute anything. Some assumed that they had committed some sin or variation of sins and that this was their punishment. One man had been in this situation for 38 years. I don't know about you, but when I have a stomach virus that lasts for a day, I am ready to be done with it. This man had been paralyzed for 38 years. In his mind, and in everyone else's mind that was sitting there, the only hope they had was that the waters could stir and they could get in before all of the other desperate people that were there. Can I tell you something? It was a false hope. It couldn't provide the kind of healing that they or anyone else needed. But isn't that a lot like our world today? We've got a world full of people who are desperately searching for fulfillment and healing. But most of the time, we put stock in things that bring false hope. Look what Jesus says when he sees the man in verse 6. Sorry, I'm finding my spot here. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am going, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, take your bed, and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked. When I read this, at first glance, I think, that seems like a question we already know the answer to. So why would Jesus ask that? Don't all of these people gathered here want to be healed? Don't they want to walk again? Don't they want to see again? Don't they want to talk again? Why did he ask? I think Jesus asked because he wasn't thinking in terms of physical healing. We'll read in a minute what Jesus really had in mind and what he always had in mind. But even though this man's ability to walk wasn't the end goal, Jesus still told that man to get up and walk, and that's exactly what he did. And for most, this would be a joyous occasion. For this man, it certainly was. For Jesus, it was. For those around him, it was. But then you have a group of people that have other concerns. The Jewish leaders don't care that this man has been healed. They don't care that his life has been made better. They're just upset that it happened on the Sabbath. Look at what it says in John chapter 5, starting at the end of verse 9. It says, "Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, 'Is it the Sabbath? It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed.' But he answered them, the man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.' And they asked him, 'Who is this who said to you, take up your bed and walk?' Now that man who had been healed did not know who it was, because Jesus had withdrawn as there was a crowd in the place." The Jews start with being angry that this man had taken up his bed. Because it was Sabbath, he wasn't supposed to take it up and carry it. There was a total disregard for his previous situation and the joy that he must be feeling, and a full display of the legalism that plagued the Jewish leaders. But when the man told them what had happened, their anger turned to another. They immediately want to know more about this unknown vigilante who dares to make people's lives better on the Sabbath. But he doesn't know who he was, only what he did. Isn't that a good lesson for us? When given the opportunity to bless someone incognito, let's take that opportunity. Let's allow people to remember the way we made their day and life better without worrying about if we get the credit. But Jesus did see the man again. Look at what it says in verse 14. It says, "Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, 'See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you.' The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him. And this is why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, 'My Father is working until now, and I am working.'" You get a glimpse of what is important to Jesus and why it's important. Yes, he healed the man. He also fed people and healed other people's physical ailments. But Jesus knew that meeting the physical needs of people, although good, wasn't the end-all be-all to their condition. The more serious condition of the man than any disease or pain is his soul. And that's why Jesus asked if the man wanted to be healed. He was looking forward to this moment more than anything, where he could get to tell the man, "Go and sin no more." Ultimately, it's the healing of our souls that will last. I'm standing in this dried up spring. For a long time, the people of Siloam Springs enjoyed refreshing, nutrient-rich water that on a hot summer day like today would bring satisfaction. Well, now in the year 2022, it's dried up, and there's a sign right over here that says, "Don't drink the water." I'm tempted to just leave you with that thought and let you think about it, and I hope that you will. But here's what I want to say. The pool of Bethesda was never going to heal that man in the way that he needed to be healed. A lot of the things that bring us temporary satisfaction in this life aren't designed to go the distance and bring eternal, everlasting joy. Only Jesus can bring that. But leave it up to the religious elite to spoil a holy moment. As the Jews learn who Jesus is, they begin to put pressure on him. And we don't know what they said in the dialogue, but we see something in Jesus' answer. First, we see that Jesus is claiming the same authority as the Father. You see, even though the Pharisees and scribes believed that it was unlawful for a man to work on the Sabbath, they also believed that Yahweh was always at work in their lives. Jesus was saying that he was working on the same level with the same end in mind. And second, it's clear that Jesus is echoing the sentiment found in Hosea. God desires mercy over sacrifice. He desires our hearts to be tuned to blessing the world around us rather than to keeping the law to a T. Is the Sabbath good? Yeah, absolutely. My family and I try to take one day each week where we rest from our normal weekly responsibilities. God designed Sabbath, so we should take it. But never are we to reject showing mercy to someone in the name of the law. Don't think that following the law the way that the Pharisees required will bring you what you need. Just like stirring the waters couldn't bring the right kind of healing for a sinner, having a religion that is only based on merit can't bring satisfaction to the saints. It's all about Jesus and what he brings to the table.